parenting isn't just one right way for all children, because children are not the same. Situations are not all the same. Pick your battles carefully. Do you really want to die on this hill with this thing about it's important for him to put his shoes away right now?
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Fascinating Womanhood channel, where we talk about everything that has to do with femininity and building strong, long-lasting, loving relationships. I am Cherry Lynn, and I'm here with my mom, Dixie Andolyn Forsyth. Hi.
Hi.
So we are talking about parenting today. We get so many requests for the subject, but the funny thing is we don't get a lot of specific requests. We just get, can you talk about parenting, which is fine, which is great. But we wanted to narrow it down to a specific subject just so that we can really dive deep. So we thought we would talk about when you clash as parents, meaning perhaps you don't have the same views on everything, the same views on how you discipline. Maybe you don't have the same religion as your spouse. Maybe you just don't agree on manners or reward systems. There's so many things that you can disagree on as parents. And we've heard a lot of questions that relate to that.
And before we get into it, we don't talk about this in my book, Fascinating Woman for the Timeless Woman. We don't talk about it in Vintage Fascinating Womanhood. However, we are women, and women are the mothers of civilization. And this is a subject that definitely covers what women do every day. It's part of Fascinating Womanhood, even though we didn't specifically address it in this book.
Absolutely. I think it could be its own book. It could be its own series of books, parenting in general. Today's video is really special because we're talking to the women out there. We're talking to the mothers. We're not saying specific advice for men per se. We're more saying, because we always say in Fascinating Womanhood, you can only change yourself. And
right.
Our core audience is women. So we're just giving the ladies out there some advice as to what they can do when they're feeling challenged as a parent. Just to give you some background on some of the questions that we get about parenting. One woman recently reached out to us and said, what do I do about my husband? He nitpicks my children. Another one said that she struggles with her husband losing his temper, specifically at dinner time with their children. And she feels this sense of protection to her children. So I think those are just a couple of examples of what we're hearing. And we don't get a lot of details about the stories from some of the ladies, which is fine. So we're just going to try to answer this subject as generally as we can from the stories such as those that I just mentioned. So we're going to talk today about 5 basic tips for the ladies out there that feel like they are struggling with this. But before we get into that, I think it's important to highlight what are some of the repercussions of this happening in your family?
The first thing is that when the heart of the home is really the mother and the father, and when you are clashing, when you're not getting along, that actually hurts your children more than the parenting styles being different, because it hurts your relationship. It changes the atmosphere in your home. So you want that to be as smooth as possible. Although women say often, well, he should do as much as I do. You're right, but men they're not thinking, they don't think the way we do. They aren't the kind of leaders, relationship leaders as that we are. And so we're the ones who are going to do it, because we're the ones that are more invested first in the relationship.
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest one, is the peace in your home is basically non-existent, because if you are clashing, even if you're a blended family, if you're clashing and your kids can see that, not only is the peace in the home interrupted, but I think a lot of times too, especially if you have alpha kids, your kids end up starting to run the home.
Is to be sure to tell father to mind his own business. You must never come to dinner on time. Never eat your soup quietly.
Well, they can tell.
Chaotic.
Yeah, they'll be able to tell if mom and dad disagree with each other. They can play one parent against the other, and you definitely don't want that.
Yes, that is a big one. I think another one too can be just constant arguing. Who wants to live in a home where there's constant arguing?
Yeah, not even the people who are arguing want to live.
And I think there gets to be a point, I know people where that's just the normal. Oh, we just always argue, and
Yeah.
it's normal,
Yeah.
and it's not healthy to be arguing all the time. So some of these things are unfortunately repercussions of you as parents. Now that we've talked a little bit about that, can we discuss real quickly before we step into these 5 tips, and this is actually in your book, which I think is really valuable. This is a part about parenting that is in your book that's very, very valuable. Can you talk a little bit about what a task leader is, what a relationship leader is, and what that means as parents, to you as a parent?
Couples, men and women, don't tend to marry someone who's just like them. In other words, a task leader and a relationship leader, task leaders don't tend to marry each other, though, although it's possible, but usually one takes more one role than another. And a task leader is very, very simple to understand. They're the ones who are concerned first about getting a task done. Let's get the job done. They're not as concerned in the moment about how people feel about getting the task done. Whereas relationship leaders, which tend to be more often women, because we're the ones who do most of the raising of children, we tend to be the ones who are worried about how everyone feels while they're getting the task done. It's not, and we're more tuned in to whether they're not feeling well, had a good night's sleep, grumpy, upset, worried, all those things. When we're worried about that, that comes first for us over the task, our relationship, which is why we worry about parenting style differences and how that's affecting our relationships, which is why we're getting these questions, right?
Why do you think it's important to understand the task leader and the relationship leader in regards to approaching, say, your husband about a disagreement?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because sometimes we inadvertently almost kind of think that we hope our husband is a relationship leader too, when actually we need both.
Right.
To have a real effective family, you need some of both, because fathers, men, tend to be a little harder on kids. Now, we're not talking about beatings and things like that, but they tend to be harder and more like, I've got to get my children ready to go out there and enter the world. It's a tough place. And sometimes their parenting style is reflective of the fact that they want to teach their kids responsibility, consequences for their words and actions, whereas sometimes women can get so relationship oriented that we let them not just get away with things, but not grow and have to do the hard things as much as quickly.
I think it's important to note that you can be both. I think a lot of ladies, I hear themselves kind of label themselves as a task leader instead of a relationship leader, when really they're just mistaking that they're a relationship leader that also focuses on tasks from time to time. That's absolutely
right.
Very common. I think it's just more about what your leadership role is. And I think some women too that follow us are uncomfortable just a bit with that word leader, because they think, oh, well, the masculine man is the traditional leader in the home, and the woman just is the servant.
Women are not like just an older child in the home, and the man is a dictator. That does not make for the best romantic marriages anyway.
Right.
So that was one of the misunderstandings, unfortunately, from the original Fascinating Womanhood. And I knew my mother, she raised me, I knew what she meant, and I rephrased it.
Well, and you watched her
I watched how she was. And by the way, we have to mention that there are many women who find themselves as single parents, whether they're widowed or divorced, and you absolutely have to be somewhat of a task and a relationship leader.
Right.
In those situations, absolutely. And you can be, because you sense that you need to be. You need to make sure your kids get their homework done and do their chores and things like that.
And we did a video on task versus relationship that you can click on and watch that after this one if you want to kind of go into this further. But I think it's important to talk about this when we're talking about parenting specifically, because identifying what his intent is and understanding what your strength is kind of a magical combo if you can figure it out.
And when you do, it's going to be amazing because you can. You absolutely can. So,
and we're not saying that men don't have sensitivity. We're not saying that they're not sensitive to how your kids feel. We're just saying that generally women are a little bit better at this, and they're in understanding how you can use that strength will actually help him to use his
balance. You can balance it out. Okay. Yeah.
So let's move into our 5 tips.
Number 1, every disagreement with your spouse should be discussed in private. This is one thing my parents did really well.
And you did very well.
They're going in their bedroom and the bedroom door was shut. There was never any yelling. I thought, oh, they're just visiting in there. Sometimes they were probably discussing their differences with each other or one of us, because there was 8 of us. So there had to be a lot of times, that they discussed.
No way that they didn't disagree with 8 kids.
Oh, they had
to been disagreeing.
Oh, yeah, they had to, because they were very different. And as I got older, I started to tune in on some of those because I was older and more perceptive and knew what it was. They always do it in private, not in front of your kids, for 2 very good reasons. Kids can use it against you, and they will if they can. And it destroys the harmony in your home.
So what do you do if your husband is not in tune with this? Because obviously we're talking to the ladies out there. So what if the ladies out there are watching this and they say, oh, okay, I'm going to try to take my disagreements to the side with him, but he starts to lose his temper or he snaps.
Oh, you mean like if he loses his temper at one of your kids?
Yeah, or you accidentally find yourself starting to stumble upon something with him. What should you do?
It depends what it is. There isn't one answer for that. If he's doing something like getting mad at your child for something he did do or didn't do, or she did or didn't do, you can take it to the bedroom. You don't have to do it in front of your child. It tells them they can manipulate one or the other of you.
So you're saying you would suggest the ladies verbally say, can we take
after it's over? Because it's not like, unless your child is in danger, the incident has kind of like somebody storms out or runs out crying or something, then look for an opportunity to talk to them. Because when they're in the heat of it, people aren't really listening anyway.
Care to hear anything further from you about my children?
I am not finished yet,
Oh,
Captain.
yes, you are, Captain.
When they're in the heat of it. None of us are. I'm not, you're not. If I'm really upset and someone tries to reason with me, then it's going to be the hardest. Mm-hmm. If you let just a little bit of time pass, when you realize you don't always have to react that minute. Sometimes It's just impulsive, but we don't actually have to. Okay,
so discussing things in private, I think that's a really good one. And I do have to say, growing up, the youngest of 7, you and Dad you got into disagreements. And like you said, when I was younger, I didn't notice them. And then as I got older, I was more in tune with what kind of was ruffling each other's feathers. But I never saw or heard you arguing with each other, ever. Now that I'm a parent, I'm thinking, how did they do that? To be honest, I think it would have stressed. I would have been worried if I had heard you.
You need to present a united front to your kids. For one thing, so they can't separate you, because sometimes they do.
Right.
They'll play you. You present a united front, and then your kids will know we're not getting past this.
Right. Okay, that's a good one. Number 2.
Invest in understanding your spouse or partner. And this has to do with accepting them at face value.
People, you must convince him.
Max, I can't ask him to be less than he is.
Because they grew up in the home they grew up in with the parenting that they had, and they're going to bring all that into the home you have together, and so same with you. And so understanding him and like, why is he doing this? And by the way, I have to say that I am too protective, and I know that. I tend to not want anyone to hurt my babies. I needed this is ridiculous, our kids need to be adults attitude blended with mine. So understanding him, where he came from, what his parents were like, how he was parented, and how that might play into how he's parenting now. What if he's ex-military? Like Bob's father was ex-military. He tended to do the military thing of, when I say jump, you say how high. People who don't grow up with that background don't always do that. But that was the military thing made him feel, I think, real secure. So he tried to parent with the military thing.
Absolutely. I think too, there could be so many different things that could play into why he's doing what he's doing, such as his parents. Did they have a healthy relationship? Were they divorced? What did he grow up with? Did he grow up with one parent? This is all he's seen. Not to say we're making excuses. It's more to seek the understanding, because I think the more you can understand anyone, the more patient you're going to be, and you're going to have a better approach with how you handle conflict.
If I or you feel understood, the more they will tend to listen to you.
Part of figuring this out with him is it's going to take some time. If you don't feel like you really understand, it's just going to be a lot of hunting in a way. Like for me, I found out a lot of things about my husband through just lots of conversations and just asking him a lot of things. And I almost kind of was making like notes in my head of, okay, he went through this. That's interesting. I didn't know that. And it helps you over time to kind of just approach him in a way that is tailored to what his buttons are and how sensitive he is. And of course, you want him to do that for you, but that's not what we're talking. We're talking about what you can do what's within your control.
I'm sure a lot of you have noticed if you talk to your husband and he tells you about something that happened to him, and then you figure out that's why he does this. Yeah. Once you understand it, you have a feeling of compassion towards him. And when you understand why a person does something, even though you don't necessarily agree with it, you're a lot more patient with it.
Right. So number
three, pick your battles carefully. If you're constantly feeling like he's got to do things exactly a certain way, then he's going to probably want to resist all of them. Parenting isn't just one right way for all children, because children are not the same. Situations are not all the same. Mm-hmm. Even within a family, like we had 7, you guys were all different. Everybody's a little bit different. So pick your battles carefully. Do you really want to die on this hill with this thing about it's important for him to put his shoes away right now?
I remember one of the most valuable pieces of advice I received as a parent was I was really upset and I was venting to someone about how my husband, when he gave my child a bath, he didn't wash their hair a certain way, and he didn't take care of them the same way that I did, basically, in the bathtub. And I remember her saying to me, but that's the way he does it, and that's that he should have his time with your kids and bathe them how he wants to bathe them. And allow that to be, when I'm with dad, this is what happens. Same thing with if you're away for the night and dad has to make dinner. Don't expect him to make the same dinner that you would make just because maybe his isn't as healthy or as fancy as yours doesn't mean that he's a bad dad. Like when I was growing up, when you were gone, which wasn't very often, dad would make us macaroni and cheese.
Because that's all he made.
And you know what? I look back on that and I say that was a special thing that he made, and I loved it. And I, now as a mom would probably be horrified if that were to happen to me, because I'd be like, oh, well, don't make them that for dinner. That's not enough or something. But the point here is that picking your battles means, is that really what you want to pick on him for, is the dinner that he made?
It was boxed macaroni and cheese, not homemade. Yeah, it was boxed.
I know that's hard for a lot of moms, but don't micromanage every single thing he does, because you don't really realize that some of those things are probably going to be special memories, as long as they're healthy things, like as in not abuse, or we're not talking about any of those.
Right. Yeah. We're
talking about his quirky little things that he might do that aren't the same as you.
Even the not so healthy dinner.
Yeah.
So number 4, this is more of a positive one. Praise his positive parenting that you see.
Yeah.
If you're not used to it, you might have to do a little bit of treasure hunting, because you're going to see it. That results in him feeling validated and being, again, more open to being influenced by you.
You know what? Who doesn't want to be complimented on their parenting. Everyone wants that.
Everybody does.
Just give it to him. It will really mean a lot to him. And every guy is different. Some men are more appreciative and feel so validated by that than others. But just try to give him sincere compliments when he is doing a good job. It will, and in front of the kids too. I think it's great to say that in front of the kids. Like, wow, isn't that Dad did that for you? Like,
now that's what you should definitely do in front of the kids. But do it whether you get a compliment, whether he returns the favor or not, because that's giving it with strings, and we don't do that.
Right, I agree. I just think, you might get it back, which is a bonus. If you start to say, okay, I'm going to try to compliment him at least once a week. So let's just say you're making a small goal of once a week. It will help you to look for the positives that you probably weren't noticing before.
Yeah, or you noticed and just took for granted and didn't realize, he needs to hear this.
Cool. I know on the first day of school this year, my husband just out of the blue offered that morning to take him to school. And I was like, oh, that's so wonderful that, and most women might say, well, you should take a turn, but that's not how I saw it. I saw it as, wow, you're taking a break from work to put your children first. And I think that's really great. So
that the attitude that you had promotes your lifelong love affair. The other attitude is more like, well, I'm right. It's having to be right.
Yeah, or entitled.
Yeah, which actually leads us to the fifth tip, which is you don't always have to win. Mm-hmm. And when you realize that you don't have to, there's a burden lifted off of your shoulders. It isn't to be a good parent. You don't always have to win in the parenting battles. It's okay. Your kids are going to turn out okay. No child comes with a book of instructions, and all of them are different. Your parenting style, as long as you love your kids, if your kids know when they're adults that they are loved, you're a successful parent.
I think too, along with not always having to win, is allow him to rescue you from time to time with the kids. Mm-hmm. If you need help and you're that mom that thinks, well, I just need to do it all, and I just need to be tough and do it all, and you really, really need his help, don't be afraid to ask him and let him kind of step in. And maybe it's not his area of strength. You never know. He might really step in and feel so honored that needed that you said, hey, I'm struggling right now. Or like, I think about the classic, newborn baby, and you're struggling and you don't want to interrupt your husband because it's your job, or you feel like it's your job, or you feel like you don't want to fail at your new job as a mom, but don't be afraid to say, I really need your help.
But when you do, make sure you tell him specifically, I need your help. Could you change the baby? Then he can look at it as a task. The task leader wants a task that he can feel that he can do and do good. If you just say, help me, and he doesn't know what to do, and you assume he's going to see that the laundry needs to be done and all these things.
That's a good point.
Could you please wash this batch of laundry? At least put it in. I'll fold it. Or could you fold this laundry? Could you change the baby? That gives him a specific task that he can then successfully accomplish.
This reminds me of a time where I had a small baby and I wasn't able to make dinner. And it was really hard for me to do this because I just like to do everything, and I don't want to interrupt my husband's work time. But I said to him, I wasn't able to make dinner. Is there any way you could go pick something up from this place? And he felt, I was so surprised at how jolly he was to go get dinner. And
you even told him where he could get it, so he didn't have to figure anything out.
Exactly. And I just felt so terrible. And then I felt silly for feeling terrible because he came back and he got all this food and he laid it out. And I could tell he felt like he was helping. So I think that's a good one. I'm glad that you brought that up, to be very specific about what you need.
He also feels like a hero when he rescues you. So.
Yeah. Well, that's all 5 of our tips. So I know there's so many more and we could go on and on. This could, like we said earlier, this could be its own book, but hopefully these are some good basic foundational steps that you can use. This has been a really great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for anyone out there, if you have questions for us, please drop them down below. We love to hear from you. We try to answer nearly every comment. We are here every week. So if you have any suggestions for future videos, different topics that you'd like us to cover, you can also drop those down below the video. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to check out the links attached to the video where you can find Dixie's book, Fascinating Womanhood for the Timeless Woman, as well as all the places you can find us on social media. We are on Facebook and Instagram very actively. That's all we have for today. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
See you next time. Bye.